It is time for another episode of the Final Fantasy Platinum series, the series where I go back and play every available Final Fantasy on PlayStation. I play through it, I complete it, I get 100% and I get that Platinum trophy. I then take all of that experience and I throw in my retrospective of the game, throwing in my first time memories. I then give you my current experience of the latest playthrough I had, and again, we go through the trials and tribulations of getting that Platinum trophy. In today's episode, we are looking at Final Fantasy VII Remake. So, with that all being said, what is up guys, Jen here, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. As always, I've got you covered with timestamps down below, so if there's a certain section you want to skip to, feel free to do so, whatever floats your boat. All I ask is for you to support the channel and hit the thumbs up button. Usually in these Platinum series videos, I will tell you about my history of the game I'm playing. But for Final Fantasy VII Remake, I need to direct you to my Final Fantasy VII Platinum series video so you get a good understanding of my history with Final Fantasy VII. Instead, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the remake project as a whole so far. I am thoroughly enjoying this unknown journey. I was very hyped to see the announcement that Final Fantasy VII was getting a remake, and then we found out that it was going to have various parts, and then that the first part, in this one in particular, would be covering the Midgar section. As I seen more gameplay and trailers come out leading up to launch, I was excited and hyped and ready to dive in to this project. And then as I've played through Remake and I've completed it and I'm awaiting Rebirth, I am excited for this project because it's taking my favorite game that I always claim to say I know at the back of my hand, and they are throwing curveballs left, right and center and keeping me guessing and keeping that unknown journey alive. That is what I like about this series. I love what they've done with everything. We're going to be going over all of that in this video. So in a nutshell, I love the Remake project and I'm excited for its future. Let's start off with the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, please note, this only covers the Midgar section of the original game, so expect this to be fully flushed out, and we may be visiting some spoilers in there. So if you want to avoid the story and the character section, feel free to do so and skip ahead to all of the gameplay elements. But let's get straight in to the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is an expanded version of the events that took place at Midgar during the original game, spanning over 18 chapters and a good chunk of gameplay time. The way they tackle what was presented in the original and reinvent it throughout the game, from bombing the reactor, from going up to the upper plate that we never got to do in the original, from going to the wall market and tackling the whole cloud dress scenes, and then going to the plate, going to the Shinra building, then escaping Midgar. They did it fantastically, and I have no complaints on how they've expanded the story. Now, they have some additions, again, that adds to the unknown journey, and like I stated previously, I'm very excited to see where that goes. We have Zack now, and it really shakes things up, and we really want to know what is occurring in the world of Final Fantasy VII Remake and its project going forward. So I'm going to leave story there and I'm going to talk about the characters of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I really like how every character, especially the main cast, are flushed out with more personality, more backstory, and just more to them. Having voices to these characters really bring more to the table, because in the past, all we've ever heard, like with Cloud, for example, is we've heard him in Advent Children, we've heard him in Crisis Core, we've heard him in Kingdom Hearts, and that's about it. We have not heard how he is during the whole Final Fantasy VII story, and through the Remake project, we finally get to see that, and Cody Christian Christian is doing a fantastic job as Cloud, and that applies to all of the characters. Barrett, Aerith, Tifa, Red 13, they're all bringing something to the table here, and they are making my favorite characters even more alive. Staying on the subject of characters, I want to talk about the side characters, because some of these side characters that were just fodder in the original game have been flushed out incredibly, and I've especially got to shout out the Avalanche trio of Biggs, Wedge and Jesse. There's a really nice chapter early on in the game where we get to hang around with these, where we get to go to the upper plate and get to go to Jesse's house and just interact with these characters a little bit more. They did a really good job with getting us to relate to these characters more, because for those that have played the original know what happens to these characters, or do we? But having these scenes to interact with them more, become more buddy with them, get to know them, really adds to that. And not only that, other characters like Don Corneo definitely got more flushed out, and he is exactly how I thought he would be with him being voiced, and just the insane character that he is. Not only that, but we've got all the members of Shinra that may have just had a couple of lines in the original during that Midgar segment that has again been more flushed out. Hojo, Scala, Reeve, the president himself, and Rufus. And how can I forget Heidegger also. I really like just having these characters expanded, having these characters voiced, because you can love them, you can hate them, but you're definitely going to be interacting with them and getting to know them just that little bit more. Let's move on to the world of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Again, this is only taking place in Midgar. A full game in Midgar? I know, it's crazy on paper, but they smashed it, and the way that they expanded upon Midgar, from the reactors going to Wall Market, Aerith's house, the sewers, going up to the plate, to the Shinra building, it really is nice. And as a fan, a big fan of the original, I appreciate all these expanded scenes, getting to see Aerith's house in full 3D. It's not a pre-rendered background anymore. Having a look out at the plate, even though that is kind of pre-rendered, it looks magnificent on the TV. Going over to the Shinra building and going through that whole segment, the museum, of getting to know the history of the Shinra, all of these little details add to the world, and it gets me very excited to explore the world outside Midgar. If they're doing this for Midgar, what can we expect from other locations in the main game? But bringing it back to Remake specifically, I think they did due diligence to the original with the way that they expanded all of these locations. It really does bring a new perspective to the floating city of Mako, Midgar. With an expansive, explorable city like Midgar, you expect there to be dungeons, and there are plenty. From reactors to train tunnels, and from train graveyards to sewers. They're all here, and they really do kind of flush out the game that little bit more with these dungeons to explore, monsters to go against, secrets to find, and everything else in between. Now, the last thing I mentioned just there was sewers, and I've got to admit, I wasn't a big fan of the sewer dungeons. They were a little bit tedious, especially with the various little mini games they have here and there. There's one in particular where you have to do the water pump with Aerith and Tifa. Not a fan of those little things that kind of drag out the dungeons just a little bit. I think less of that would be much better. Let's just smash through it, go through the enemies, pick up some materia, pick up some items, rest at a bench, collect a music disc. I'm fine with that, but if I'm frustrated with a small mini game where I can't get the ticker to land in the red area for these damn water pumps, it can, again, be very tedious. Staying on the topic of exploration, we talked about the city of Midgar, we talked about the dungeons within Midgar, but exploration in general, there's one thing that I will note, and I think a lot of people will agree, even though it does technically capture the way the original Midgar is, with it being very linear, very kind of tight spaced and going from pre-rendered background to pre-rendered background, the amount of times we have that little prompt appear with the arrows where we do a little jump or we go through a tight spaces, they're not few and far between. There are plenty, and it really can break the game up a little bit, and it is frustrating, especially during this latest playthrough. I think the first playthrough I was just in awe of playing the remake finally, but this time around I just want to get through this corridor. I don't want to be shuffling through this space too long. I get why they did it because of the restraints on the PlayStation 4, even though we had a PlayStation 5 version eventually, but they were there. I get it. But from a gameplay perspective, it can really break up things in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Okay, the most exciting thing about Final Fantasy VII Remake is the combat. This is a masterful modernization of what a RPG combat system can be. It is magnificent. There's something here for everyone. A little bit of action, a little bit of the turn-based, but not quite turn-based, but opportunities to slow down time, pick your attack, and be strategic. And again, we have a classic mode. Me personally have not played it, so I can't give you a perspective, but I am opening the comments for someone that does have a perspective on classic mode. It is there to make things easier and feel a bit more like the original. There isn't straight turn-based, there are definitely similarities, and you can get on with this combat system really well. I really do hope, and I know that they're going to expand upon this through the remake trilogy, but I hope they consider using this combat system again for maybe a Final Fantasy, another remake somewhere along down the lines, because this is something special here and I don't think it should be wasted. Keeping on combat, we get to control all of the characters. In this one specifically, we get to play as Cloud, Aerith, Tifa, and Barret, and they're all a pleasure to control. Barret with his long-range weapons, Aerith with her magic staff and just kind of helping the team with her magic-based attacks. And we have Cloud, of course, with the Buster Sword with both of his stances, kind of changing the tide of battle. And then Tifa. I think a lot of people will agree with me. Tifa is my favorite in combat. She's fast, she's powerful, and she has a good range of abilities that support her. Throw Materia in the mix and you can get a good team together. But I do like the characters. I am excited to see how they are expanded in the next game, and then the next game beyond that. But right here, they have a very good representation when it comes to combat. Now, with you controlling one character at a time, technically, the AI is alright. It's not great, but it is alright. It does the job. I didn't find myself in any kind of difficult situations because of the AI, but at the same time, I didn't find myself in any great situations because of the AI. But you have the option to easily switch between characters at a click of a button, and if you don't want to switch characters, just the shoulder triggers will be able to get you to give those commands at ease, and I really, really do like and praise this combat system. I'm going to talk about some supporting factors to this combat system. Let's talk weapons first. There are just a handful of weapons in this game, but they do bring stuff to the table. They are kind of varied in if they are more of an attack weapon, are they more magic, or are they the best of both worlds? You can experiment with them, see what happens with the materia setups you have and what enemies you're going against, and you can really kind of get into combat and have the weapons that suit you. The same goes for the armor and the accessories. It really is a situational kind of thing, and I'm sure once you have the right setup or the go-to setup when you're running through the hard mode, you'll have no problems and appreciate the way these systems work. My only complaint about that weapon system is every time I try and upgrade it, I go into the thing and it zooms in and we've got the materia leveling up. As good as that is, going into that menu all the time can be a little bit cumbersome, but you can just simply click them all on auto to prioritize requires even an attack or like magic, and you'll be pretty good with that, and that's what I used during this playthrough. But the most definitive factor of combat is Materia. I feel Materia doesn't really shine, or you really don't get to grips with it until you play through the game in hard mode. But just playing on the normal mode or even easy, there are a lot of combinations you can do here. There's a lot of new Materia here compared to the original, but if you are a fan or have played the original, you get to grips with the Materia quite well. You've got elemental, pull it with a spell, you can either attack with that element or defend against that element. You have more Materia that kind of helps out the whole team synergy, and I'm talking about the synergy Materia, where it will use a spell that is connected to when you do a certain ability. And not only that, in the integrate version, this does it without expending any MP and can be great for a hard mode playthrough. Other Materias, I would probably suggest anything that is ATB related, because you want to go through that and have the best abilities at your disposal, use them all one after the other, let them recharge and go again. It can be very satisfying. There is a lot to experiment with here, and you even have an enemy skill Materia. Even though there is only 4 enemy skills that we can learn from this, it is there, and I'm hoping that it can be expanded upon in the next game. I can't talk Materia without summon Materia. Now, in the OG, we didn't get summons until we got outside of Midgar, but obviously they need those summons to kind of just glorify that combat just a little bit more, and we get them here. There is a small selection to pick through, and you can get more as you do the VR simulation with Chadley. They are nice to have here in Remake. They look really good when they use their special attacks, but me, during this playthrough specifically, I didn't really use it. I used Carbuncle a few times because I wanted that refresh on kind of like Protect and a few cures here and there. But apart from that, didn't really see summons, but I do suggest that you use them if you're playing this for the first time and see how good they are just using their special attacks, seeing Bahamut use Mega Flare, see Ifrit use Hellfire. It is a glorious spectacle to see during combat. I touched on it a few times while we're talking about combat, but I want to take this moment to talk about hard mode. I really feel like hard mode, especially for me, is where the game tells you, okay, this is how everything works. You need to use everything at your disposal and really smash through this game using everything you've learnt, and be considerate of the materia you are equipping, as well as your accessories and weapons. Because in hard mode, you cannot use any items. They're off the table. You can't replenish any MP at benches, they only refreshes at the start of each chapter. So there's some detrimental effects that you need to consider, and it really gets you thinking. Now, I dived straight into hard mode straight after I'd completed the game. I already had it in my head that I could just smash through this with ease. I was wrong. You don't want to be doing that. You want to consider each battle, especially if you've used the assessed materia on your previous playthrough and you've got all the statistics that you need. Have a look at the enemy's weaknesses. Try and build up an elemental affinity either in your armor or weapon to help you through that. Consider using your ATB boosts and everything else in between, because you're going to need it. Hard mode is really satisfying when you're having those tough combats, especially the boss battles, because these can be very, very difficult. They're very satisfying once you're done with it, and I've got nothing but praise for the hard mode, and again, excited to see what they do with it in the next game. Now, Final Fantasy VII Remake only takes place in Midgar, so how is its endgame and its side content? Now, there are a few hub areas as you go through the game. Specifically, you got to Sector 7, where 7th Heaven is, you've got Sector 5, and you've got the Wall Market. These are your main hubs for side quests, and you'll get to know the characters. And something I forgot to mention when I was talking about side characters, a few characters introduced here are from the compilation, especially characters like Leslie and Kyrie. They were in the novels and they have been brought into the compilation. It's a welcome addition, and again, they are involved with some of the side quests, and it's a good way to get to know the characters throughout Midgar. These quests, they give decent rewards. Again, we have Chadley as well, which is your essential materia guy. He throws you into combat simulators. He wants you to do certain things with materia. All this content really gets you to know the combat system and the world really, really well. I personally wish there was more, but for what it is pretty sufficient. And again, with Chadley, you have the combat simulator. At first, you're going through getting all the summons, but then when you go to the Colosseum in War Market, you've got those enemies to go against, and then there's a Shinra combat simulator in the Shinra building, and then again, there is a big list and some challenges in that one as well. So I think with the game where it is, and when you're comparing it to the original, there is a sufficient amount of side content and endgame content here. I just wish there was just a little bit more. Let me just take a moment to talk about the soundtrack of Final Fantasy VII Remake. In short, it is incredible. It was such a pleasure listening to tracks that I'm so familiar with in a new way. And there's songs like the reactor theme that can blend in seamlessly to a battle theme. And this occurs throughout the remake, and it just kind of keeps everything connected and flowing so well. There are also new tracks as well that really add to the game and have become very quickly some of my favorite Final Fantasy tracks of all time. Now is the time to talk trophies of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I think this is a relatively easy platinum. It just takes a bit of time. There are a few trophies where you'll need to replay chapters. Luckily for us, we unlock a chapter select when we complete the game for the first time. So for trophies like where you need to wear each dress, and there is 9 dresses, I think it's Dress to the Nines, ironically the trophy is called, you will need to play the game at least 3 times, but with the chapter select this is made a little bit easier. The only advice I can give for that one is just note down what dresses you've done in your first playthrough, and then when you do the chapter select, do them again, and then when you do the chapter select, do them again. Very straightforward and an easy trophy to get. Another one that's a little bit of time, we've mentioned it all throughout this video, it's hard mode. This is one of the last trophies that I got for this, but hard mode, as long as you know how your materia works, utilize Tifa. I tell you, Tifa is a mainstay of getting through hard mode as well as the synergy materia. You will have no issues with hard mode and you'll get that trophy just like that. And then some of the harder trophies to do with some of the mini games in Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's one in particular where you do the bike mini game quite early on and you have to impress Jessie. This can be a little bit tedious, but I got it after a few attempts. And then we have the combat simulator related ones. There is one where you have to beat every single summon and then defeat the Pride and Joy. I really need to direct you to BltzZ's videos on these subjects because he has masterful guides that will help you and get you through anything combat related in Final Fantasy VII Remake. I certainly gave it a watch and it gave me the confidence and the knowledge to get through this and get those trophies with ease. Most of the trophies are chapter related or they're to do certain side quests. Again, side quests in the War Market particular, there are 2 sets of side quests that you can do, obviously 1 per playthrough, so this is where you will need to return and do the side quests again. Yes, a little bit tedious, but a trophy nonetheless if you want to get all the side quest trophies. And apart from that, again, I think this is just a trophy list that just takes a little bit of your time and a little bit of patience, and it's really one of the more enjoyable platinum trophies to get in the Final Fantasy series. And there we have it, Final Fantasy VII Remake completed, done and dusted. I'll probably revisit again. I had the pleasure of playing it quite close up to Rebirth release, so I'm really excited to move straight on to Rebirth now. You probably got a question and saying, where's Intermission? Why have you not done any of the Yuffie stuff? I'm feeling tackling that in a little mini episode as it's got a separate trophy list, and it'll be nice to talk about that in more detail because Intermission does some really good things that improve upon on some of the things that I've spoken about in this video. So stay tuned for that little mini episode coming out, I don't know, whenever I decide to just get the last trophy, and I think you guys might know what that last trophy is. It's a frustrating one. It's a very frustrating one. But yes, Final Fantasy VII Remake. I love this remake. I am excited for the project as it goes forward, and I'm really interested to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell if you want to be notified of that content. Please leave a like as it also supports the channel. And again, get involved in the comments section below because it's always a good discussion down there. And until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.